good evening, everybody. Welcome to College Aid Pro office hours. We're going to give it about a minute to let people get in and get connected and their audio working. But before Rynda and I introduce ourselves and get started, feel free to use the chat to put what part of the country you're calling in from or zooming in from and what year your students are. That will be just for kind of non-explicit questions and things that we want to know about you. Once we get going, use the Q&A for all the questions that will be saved. Everybody who signed up and registered will get a recording of this. So we're happy to do that, but go ahead and start letting us know where you're from and where your student is in the process, and we'll get going here in just a second. All right, we got Virginia with a senior, New York with a senior.
All right. Yeah, we got a lot of people in tonight.
Outstanding. Pennsylvania senior, awesome. I'm going to kick off with a disclaimer. We are here to give you the best advice we can based on the information we have. We are not tax accountants. We are not attorneys. We're not financial advisors in this in this aspect of these calls. We are just answering questions on financial aid to the best of our ability. If it's a simple question, we're going to do our best to answer it. If it's something really in depth, we may refer you to book an hour with one of the experts because we can't answer that without much more information. So bear with us. We want to give you all the answers we can, but we also don't want to lead you astray because we don't have enough information. Rynda, anything to add there? And why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'll come back on.
All right. I'm Rynda Wilk. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Me and Chuck were just talking about how much we enjoy doing these hours. Hopefully we can get to all or nearly all of your questions. I am my background was as a financial planner and a financial coach, but I specialize solely on college planning now because I was getting really frustrated as a financial coach, not being able to help young adults who had a lot of student loan debt as much as I would have liked. I thought, let me get on the other end of this equation and work with them before they go to college. And that's what I did. So, and I also have two kids. I have a senior in high school this year, and I have a sophomore in college. So I have experienced this process from your standpoint as well. So how about you, Chuck?
Awesome. Thank you. I'm Chuck Bates. My background is also as a financial advisor. I work full-time as an advisor here in Houston, Texas. Help people with their investments, retirement, taxes, stuff like that on a full-time basis. The reason I got interested in this is similar but slightly different than Rynda. My wife and I are foster parents and adopted a little boy. And in the state of Texas, any kids coming out of Child Protective Services get tuition waivers to in-state universities. And when I learned that, it got me thinking, what else don't I know about this process? So I dove in and learned as much as I can. And now I try and help, any family I can navigate this process successfully. And to Rynda's point, I had a call yesterday with a prospective client who had $311,000 in Parent Plus student loans. So anything we can do on the front end to prevent that is huge, and that's what we want to do. So looks like the questions are already coming in. Rynda, you want to take the first one?
Oh, hold on. I'm not on the right screen. I was looking at the chat, and the people tell us where they're from. Yep. Okay, here we go. Now I'm on the right screen. I am on SSDI and know my situation will require an appeal exception, but have some questions about how to fill the CSS. Okay. And they're specifically asking about untaxed benefits and real estate. So we'll probably need a little bit more information. I'm not sure exactly what the question is. So if you have a specific question about those things, please type it in, and we'll get back to it. And since that wasn't really a question, I'll go ahead to the next one. So regarding a HELOC, if only the line is opened but no loan, can people deduct the line?
So she's saying the line of credit is like 100,000, but they haven't drawn on it. So
No, so you know, unfortunately it doesn't quite work that way. That's a line of credit, but you don't actually owe that to the bank since you haven't drawn on it. So that wouldn't be something you would include as debt on your home.
The
Sorry.
CSS profile will have a little caret that you can click on, and it will kind of clarify on the debt and equity portions of your homes. It'll clarify kind of what they expect and accept. I think you can argue that it's probably a gray area, but the directions are very clear. I'm going to take a swing back on the Social Security disability one. In terms of income, if it flows through as taxable income to your AGI, it's going to impact your CSS, SAI, and the FAFSA SAI. If it doesn't flow through as taxable income, it probably will not. As it relates to real estate, I'm not sure how there's a connection between the disability income and the real estate. So that one I can't take a swing at.
All right. Next question in the CSS profile, specifically the parent earnings section. How much did XYZ earn from work in 2022, which is a required question? You have to include only W-2 income of one parent, right? I think is the question. We don't have any other work income apart from 1099 IMT. Thank you. So I'm not sure how the 1099 INT is work income. So yeah, that typically wouldn't be work income, and you wouldn't need to include that in that question. But the parent earnings section, if I'm not mistaken, Chuck, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, I believe there's one of those questions for each parent. So
Yeah,
did parent A earn from work? How much did parent B? If parent B didn't earn anything from work, you can put 0 for that, and just put the amount parent A earned. I hope that answers the question.
I would tend to agree with that. I think from past Zooms, I think this person asking the question might be separated. So that might be why they're asking only one parent. But again, that's going to depend on the schools you choose as well. Some of the CSS schools only require the custodial parent. Some of them require both. I will go ahead and put that link in the chat for which ones use one or both. So it's kind of a it depends answer.
Chuck is so organized. You guys are really lucky to have him on this call tonight. And just to add to that a second, if that's the case where it's there's a 2 household situation, maybe divorced or separated parents, if both parents do need to submit their financial information, it's done separately. So each parent will only see that question pertaining to themselves, just so you're not worried about having to trade off financial information with like an ex-spouse or something. Okay. Chuck, that one's directed to you. Would you please share the information regarding HELOC you just mentioned?
Yeah, I'm trying to go back into my dummy account to get that screenshot. If you guys don't mind bearing with me for a few minutes.
All right, well, I'll skip that one and you can hit that one next. Okay, where the CSS asks about untaxed benefits and specifically says, if not mentioned elsewhere, if CSS has already had a line item for both total SSDI and for taxed SSDI, then the untaxed portion of SSDI would not need to be listed here. Is that accurate? So that when it says untaxed benefits, it lists specifically pretty much which ones they're looking for. I need to look at that question too. Let me open up my CSS dummy account and pull that up. But yeah, I mean, it looks like what you're saying is you've already filled out total SSDI and tax, so untaxed is like can be inferred from that. I wouldn't list it again because they're not going to know that you're restating something that they already have the information for, unless they're specifically asked for that type of untaxed income. I wouldn't. All right, I'll go to the other one, Chuck, while you're still
Okay.
looking at that.
Sorry.
Oh dear, this one's about application essays. I'll do my best. That's not my forte. Okay, it's a shame Dan Bissig isn't on with us tonight. How optional is oh, okay, so you're asking if a essay says that it's an optional essay, should you do it or not? Would it be more important to hit the EA deadline without an optional essay, or wait to submit with an essay? I really think that's going to be a case-by-case basis. Wouldn't you say, Chuck? I mean, it's hard for me to say without knowing your student. If you've said everything that you feel is important to share about your student's story already without that optional essay, maybe you can get away without it. But I feel like Dan, I'm gonna like share my inner Dan with you and say it's probably better, everything else being equal, to submit it than not to submit it, assuming that you have confidence that your student is going to be able to write a good essay. But other than that, I don't know that I can go any deeper on that question. Sorry.
Yeah, I've heard Dan and a couple of the other admissions advisors say optional essays are not optional. But that being said, I wouldn't turn in a bad one if it's trying to slide under the deadline. So I agree 100% with Rynda.
All right, are you ready?
I am. I'm going to share my screen.
All right.
Bear with me. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Does it just look like a PowerPoint slide with some?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So this is the question when you're filling it out. So tell us about Kinsey's parents' home purchase year, home purchase price, current market value, total amount owed. And then if you click on this caret here for total amount owed, it says enter the total current debt on the home, including the principal balance on the primary mortgage, as well as any second mortgages, outstanding home equity loans, or other outstanding related debts against the home. Do not include interest due, escrow payments, insurance premiums, association fees, taxes, personal consumer loan, or other debts. So that's where you would get that information. I hope that helps. It is approximately the 70th page of questions in the CSS profile. That's not an exact number because you could answer some different that create, give or take, more screens or more questions. But somewhere around 70 questions under the parent housing details is where this will come up. So hope that helps.
Thank you. Okay, I am married and will have 2 children in college. When I use college calculations, the results show I can afford
half my salary.
Half my salary. I have 2 children in college. Does that sound correct? Seems like a glitch. What option do I have? I mean, it's hard for me to say without seeing your inputs whether it's a glitch, but it's going to be a big number, right? It's always a bigger number than people think is realistic. I don't think I've ever seen anybody go, oh yeah, sure, I can afford that every year. And you don't like this year for the FAFSA, there's no they're not gonna divide your SAI in half just because you have 2 kids in college anymore. So they've changed that calculation, and it would look like more this year from a FAFSA standpoint than it would have last year if you'd put in the same numbers into the FAFSA calculator.
And income can be assessed at up to 47%. So when you say it's almost half your salary, if it's high enough, that's not necessarily a glitch, because we know for sure that income can be assessed all the way up to 47% as you go up that income scale.
Yep. So I would say to that person too, sorry, I know you're we're getting ready to move on. Go to MyCap. If you have a free account, if you don't, set one up and enter all of your profile information in MyCap. It's at mycap.collegeaidpro.com. I'll put it in the chat, and you'll get an you'll get your SAIs, your student aid indexes, for the federal methodology, which is calculated by the FAFSA, and for the institutional methodology, which will be arranged but that's the CSS profile. And the reason it's arranged is because not all schools use your information the same way, and a lot of that has to do with home equity. But that's why we give you a range to let you know kind of the various ways your information may be calculated and show up.
You want me to take this next one?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. What do we got here? On the CSS profile, how much did Lisa earn from work in 2022 is required? I'm unclear what I should be entering here. The form has already asked for my AGI line 11. Yep. Wages and other earned income required should be the earnings from work. What is in box 1 from the W-2, wages, tips, and other compensation, or box 5 on the Medicare wages and tips, which is a higher amount, or something else? I would simply go with box 1 on the W-2, the lower number. That's essentially kind of accounts for the other things that are captured. And really what this is trying to get to, so they're going to have an AGI number, they're going to ask what you made at work, and then if you have a business or something down the road that rolls through to your 1040, they're going to try and figure out from those schedules or LLC income or S Corp income how your income made from work and that other income match up to the AGI. That's kind of the premise. I hope I didn't oversimplify it or overcomplicate it, but I hope that makes sense.
All right. Is there a way to see previous questions so I don't repeat? Actually, there's not, but if you want to go ahead and type in your question, and we'll go ahead and answer it again. So don't worry about it.
So this looks like a follow. Oh, no. Regarding SAI, used to be called the EFC. Yep, that's exactly correct. Does the FAFSA still have the same percentage for computing parents' income, assets, student income, and assets like before? Yes, that's mostly the same. There are some subtle things that have changed, like previously, Rynda mentioned, if you had 2 students, your SAI or EFC would be divided. That's gone. If you had a business with less than 100 employees, you didn't have to value the business. That's now gone. So there are some subtle changes, but in theory, the parents' income, like I said, it's on that scale going up to as much as 47%. Parent assets on the FAFSA are what, 5.6? I think student are at 20. Those numbers basically haven't changed. Anything to add, or do you think that's a complete answer?
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I can think of is the parents' income allowance, I think, got a little bit bigger, a little bit more generous than before. So just a subtle, like you said, subtle changes. Okay, so for divorced parents, does the one who filed the head of household fill out the FAFSA for a freshman entering in the fall of 2024? So the answer to that question is no, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Or not necessarily. Both parents contribute excuse me, equally to financial aid, splitting bills. No parent pays official child support, and what documentation is provided to calculate who pays more child expenses. So there is no documentation that we know of, right? This is a totally new thing. They haven't given us really much to go on in terms of how families are supposed to figure this out. But if you're in the best possible scenario, if you truly believe that you contribute equally, because what you can do is just make sure that the family or the household that would have and this is for FAFSA only, but the household that would have the lower SAI, make sure that household contributes $50 extra so that they can be the ones to report their finances. That way you might be able to, get your SAI a little bit lower.
Yeah, anytime you can make a reasonable argument of to which parent supplies more of the financial resources for the student, it's always better if it's to be the one who has the lower income, lower assets. So, you know.
Yeah.
I
Is it- okay, sorry.
ladies first. I'm terrible on Zoom for cutting people off. Ladies first.
I keep having these afterthoughts, Chuck. The reason I said for FAFSA only, because FAFSA only one household submits their financial information. With CSS, as was mentioned at the beginning, most of the time, both households have to submit their financial information. So that's all I wanted to say. Go ahead.
Awesome. So I noticed there's a question in the chat. Remember, questions need to go in the Q&A, but we appreciate the question. I'm going to try and address it. And it says, what are the benefits of the new FAFSA? I'm going to really make this overly simplified. The benefits are there's fewer questions. So down from 100 to approximately, I don't know, we'll call it 40 is the expected number. And for lower income families, there is a much greater eligibility for Pell Grant money. Other than that, it may not be benefits to other people. So I'm oversimplifying, but that's the majority of it, in my opinion. Rynda, anything to add there?
No, I mean that pretty much is it. So.
All right. And I'm going to take a swing at this next one because it's easy. So you can have the harder one after it. Can I put my name and email as the main contact at the start of the CSS instead of my child's? No, do not do that. It needs to be your child's email. It needs to be your child's information. You're filling it out as if you are the student. Does that make sense? And Rynda, would you disagree?
I don't disagree. Okay. What is this hard question he's giving me?
It's not too hard.
Why does CAP autofill some merit that isn't necessarily guaranteed? Because in its infinite wisdom, if it deems that it's very likely that the student will be awarded that merit, then it will go ahead and fill that in. If it's not too sure, it's not going to fill it in.
And keep in mind, right, they've got several years or decades of doing this for families and have a good idea of who's gotten awards, what the average award is. They're mixing that with the information from the common data set that the schools themselves disclose. So you can have a lot of confidence in these numbers. All right. I didn't answer the not required questions, specifically questions that have a checkbox to select on my CSS profile. When I click on the review application button, my CSS profile puts no against those questions and have not been answered. I'm following Peg's advice of not answering any non-required questions. Well, I agree you should not answer any non-required questions. On the ones I have done, I have not seen it put a no in the review. So I don't have personal experience to give you details on that. I will look at it and see if I can derive that or figure out why, but I won't be able to answer on this call. So sorry about that.
All right. What are the 3 most impactful mistakes people most often make on the CSS? Well, I would say the first one is probably to include their student's 529 plan as a student asset instead of a parent asset. Most 529 plans are parent owned, and so they should be added to the parent assets. Most costly, probably maybe overvaluing your house would be another one. If you have a home, it's okay to use something called the IRS quick sell rule when you're putting the fair market value of that. So that means taking an estimate of the fair market value and then subtracting 20% from that to account for the fact that if you had to sell it for your kid to go to school, you wouldn't necessarily be able to wait for the highest, offer to come in. Plus you have to pay, the real estate agents and closing fees and stuff like that. What are some other ones that come to mind that are really biggies, Chuck? Am I missing?
I think you did an amazing job of covering that. And ironically, it is a great feeder into what I'm about to put in the chat. Coming up on November 7th, Peg and Matt are going to be doing a completing the CSS profile, how the FAFSA changes impacted presentation. 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. It's free. The first thing they're gonna cover is the critical mistakes and how to avoid them. So if you have time, I'd encourage you to jump on there, and the link to register is in there. It's free. It's well worth your time. Not that Rynda and I are amazing, but anytime you can get Matt and Peg, you know, you should take advantage of it.
That's right. Okay, since you did that, I'll take this next question, and then maybe you can jump in with another, because I think there are a few things we were supposed to mention on this call. And
Yeah.
Okay, I'm working with a client that has applied early decision for Vanderbilt. We're not filling out the CSS profile application. The family lives in a rented home, but plans to move back to their old home, which has been rented out for several years. Basically, they will go from having 1 million in investment property to having 1 million in home equity. CAP suggests that first year costs will be 71,000 as renters and 14,000 as living in their home. We called financial aid office and they said to use the facts as they would be when school starts in September 2023, which is this right? 2023, which is the lower amount.
No, that's not the right date. It'll be fall of 2024 because September 23 is already passed.
Yeah. The actual application, though, only has boxes for 2022 info. We have written about the change in living situation in the special circumstances section. Any thoughts on whether this will be included in the preliminary financial aid offers expected mid-December? It's going to take me a minute to read through this.
Yeah,
and put all these facts together.
I'm going to take Rynda off the hook here and say this is a little too complex for this forum, and that you're going to need to sign up for an hour with one of the experts. I want to make sure that we're clear on the year. I want to make sure we're clear on where they're living, like, because the context implies backwards to me. Well, maybe not. $1 million rental investment property might be treated more than $1 million of home equity, but there's a lot of questions that I don't think we can parse through in this forum in this short time. So I'm going to share my screen and show you where you can book time with an expert if you so choose.
And I will address this one piece of it, the special circumstances section. In the majority of cases, and pretty much we always do this at CAP, we save those special circumstances for the appeals process. And that way the financial aid office really has to address it one way or the other. Just to throw that in there.
Yeah, I agree. Save that for the appeal. All right. So if you've logged into your College Aid Pro MyCap software, you get to the dashboard. Up here on the right is Talk to an Expert. You can click on that and purchase an expert consultation, and they'll go through. If you're going to do that when you sign up, I think it gives you a notes section. Include as much possible detail as you can in the notes so they can prepare, and they may call you back or email you back with asking for more information. So that's the way to do that. And while we're doing that, I'm going to take a break and go through a couple other things that we need to talk about. So the first is we are ending our Wake Me When We're Over service for the year because we're getting late into the school year, right? Like you should be far enough along. We recommend a November 1st deadline to get in your applications, your financial aid applications. Obviously this year it's a little different with the delayed FAFSA. So I'm going to share my screen again. Can everybody see that? Rynda, can you see that?
I can see it.
All right. So what we're saying is we are no longer doing the admissions because that's too late at all. And in the next week or so, we'll be ending the financial aid. So if you're on this call and you think you're going to need more help to get through this, you can sign up for the financial aid, Wake Me When It's Over, and you'll have access to somebody like Rynda, myself, Matt, Peg. One of the experts at CAP will walk you through. We will do essentially all the heavy lifting. Our team will complete a lot of the applications for you. You still have to review it, click submit. but as long as you provide your information, we'll help you get it complete. And again, so you have a couple weeks to get in on that. And then as part of that, if you're not sure it's a good fit, you can schedule a 15-minute consultation with one of the experts where you can ask not financial aid questions. We're not solving problems in your process like you're submitting here tonight. You can ask, hey, what will the service include? How will you help me? What will the process be? What can I expect as an outcome? Stuff like that. So 15 minutes with an expert to walk you through the process, hopefully convince you of the value proposition. And then you can make an educated decision if this late in the process, it's worth your time and money to have somebody assist you all the way through to the end. And we mean to the end, like the day you drop them off at the dorm is essentially when we're done. We'll help you with the appeals. We'll help you with the applications. We'll help you with the mechanics of paying. After that, then you're done. So here's the link. And again, this is only, I'm going to type it in, only a 15-minute learn about the services meeting, but it should be pretty productive and give you an idea if we can be helpful to you. So I hope that helps. All right. I think that's all I had to cover. So we've talked about the Wake Me When It's Over ending. We've talked about the CSS profile event on 11/7. And we've given you a way to find out if the Wake Me When It's Over is a good fit for you. So obviously we believe in the service. We think that it's invaluable for parents. If you have any questions, schedule one of those 15-minute meetings.
All right. I am actually looking ahead at the next question, and I'm going to try to pull it up on my dummy CSS profile so that I can see it firsthand. Do you want to skip that one and go to the next one while I do that, Joel?
Sure. So the next one, if I've completed all my requirements, is it a benefit to apply early action at schools on my list? That would be more of an admissions question. Again, I'm here for the financial questions. If you've completed everything and you want to apply early action, I think it's fine. It may, at some schools, it may help. Some schools, it may not. Just keep in mind, early action is a little different than early decision. But if you can do that, that's great. The other thing I highly recommend, and I'm not sure where you're calling from or dialing in from, but in Houston, if I have questions like that, we have something called the HARN, Houston Area Recruiters Network. It has all the recruiters for the nationwide colleges that live and work here in Houston. And they are your best advocates. So like if you have one in your town, you can reach out to the recruiters from the school you're interested in and ask about the benefits applying early action. And they will give you all the details, the bells and whistles, and really walk you through if it's a great fit for your situation or not. So that's my take on that one. I hope it helps. You want me to do one more while you're still looking?
I was going to say about that question you just answered. Anecdotally, and this only applies to a few colleges, but some schools, I've been really shocked to hear their stats on the percentage of their incoming freshman class last year that came from their early decision and early action applicants. It was, in some cases, crazy high as a percentage, like 95%. So I would say if you're confident in your application and it's ready to go, I'd let it go. Click submit on that thing.
All right, we've got another question about I lost my question screen. Bear with me one second. While you're looking that up, back to the question on property value. How does financial aid and property value impact aid if you have a lot of equity in your home? So the short answer is most of the CSS schools treat it differently, and some schools assess home equity more than others. I'm going to give you an example and then I'll share my screen. Just bear with me for 1 second. A good example of that is Northwestern Evanston, add school, dashboard. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here. You know if you guys can see it.
I can see it.
All right, so this is a dummy account, and I'm honestly not sure what number I've put in for home equity. But you can see here, Northwestern and Stanford, obviously it's got the same financial information, the same home equity. And you can see that Stanford is about what, 6,000, maybe getting close to 7,000 cheaper because they do not treat home equity the same way Northwestern does. So the short answer is it depends. A lot of schools treat it differently. You just need to be aware of that. All of that is baked into the MyCap software. And you can, you know, all things being equal, if there's a difference between your net cost, it's typically going to be, you know, related to potentially home equity as one component. So something to think about. I don't know if that answers it, but I hope it's helpful.
All right, if you're between questions, I'll jump in here with that.
Awesome.
One that I would, the question about Social Security. None of those questions that you're referring to are required questions. So I would leave them all blank.
Good stuff. All right. Are divorcing parents ever asked to provide a copy of divorce decree to prove asset division and or support amounts? I have not heard of that from my families that I've worked with. You know, I've heard them asking for both people's tax returns, you know, supporting documents around W-2s or bank statements, but not divorce decree. I mean, typically, you know, it doesn't have to do with who has custody. It doesn't have to do with who claims a child on the taxes. It's basically dials back to who provides 51% of the financial resources. I suppose, like, if there is a divorce decree legally, I suppose you might be obligated to pay a certain amount if it's dictated in the divorce decree, but I haven't heard of the schools asking for it. Rynda, anything different?
I mean, my take on that is that the CSS is more interested on what's actually happening than anything that might be written in a divorce decree. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Okay. My son is interested in Tufts University. I was surprised how much aid the school would make available to us based on the estimate at the CAP website. How is that amount calculated? So first of all, there's two different categories of aid that might be showing up for you. And if you
I'll share my screen. I
you're
just
gonna
added
share
the
your
school.
screen? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, go for it. Yeah, it'll take me a second to get it up so you can share it. And I think Chuck will show you here how to look and see whether they're predicting need-based grants or merit scholarships.
Yep. So if you were signed into your account and completed a full profile, so if you click on your profile up here, it says 100% complete. Then you've selected that school. I just selected it. Where did it go? Tufts. It will tell you here, are you getting need-based grants or are you getting a merit scholarship? And the important thing to keep in mind is you will typically get the greater, but not both. So whichever one is bigger is what you'll likely get, but not both. And to give you an idea, you can kind of look at this financial aid caret and click down. So we see that the SAI basis is institutional and the total need met is about 99%. So in most cases, that means they are not going to give merit scholarships, and that because of your financial situation, they've given you, you know, a generous grant. As you can see, 99% of need met, but only average non-need merit is $1,000, and only 2.3% of students are getting that. So they're just simply very generous with need-based financial aid.
Good answer.
Okay. We owe it all to the CAP software. That's why you guys got to subscribe to this. It makes it easy.
All right, so for real estate, do you take fair market value, Zillow or Trulia, etc., then 20% quick sale? Do you also then reduce by 6 or 7% realtor fees? So, okay, here, let me make it simple. This is what the IRS quick sale rule allows for. Take the fair market value, and it's fine to use one that's on Zillow or Trulia or something similar, and then multiply that times 0.8. That gives you 80% of that number, and that would be the number you would put in your form as your fair market value for your home.
Good stuff. All right. Can I subtract the amount I would expect to pay in capital gains tax on an investment property when calculating value equity in the property? No, I'm going to just refer back to exactly what Rynda said. And there's also a caveat here, right? So this is an investment property. This is not your primary residence. So it goes in a different field and it has different questions. If it's only one property, it's going to ask for those values. You know, I would not subtract the capital gains value because you haven't sold it. You don't know what that's going to be. There's just too much unknown in that question for me. But you know, if it's your primary residence, what Rynda just said is perfect. Otherwise, this goes in the parental asset and it's additional property outside of your primary residence.
Yeah, because keep in mind, this is one thing that reviewers of your CSS profile can and sometimes do, not always, check. They can look up the address of the property and find for themselves what they think the market value should be. So they're not going to know, you know, they're not going to go so far as to try to figure out how much tax you might have to pay when you sell the house. You know, but it could be a situation if it would make a big difference. You could try to write an appeal and include something like that if you feel like it was going to make a big difference. I'd have to see the numbers to say if it was worth it, but I mean, that's your backup option.
Good
All right.
answer. Guessing changes cannot be made to the CSS profile once submitted. If you realize you made a mistake, we have one school that has a November 1 deadline for the CSS profile and all the others have later deadlines. Hate to miss the session on 11/7 before submitting. So no, it's very difficult to make changes once you've submitted it. In my opinion, Rynda, I don't know if you have a different one.
I just
but you
did
can,
that today, actually, and they only allow you to make changes one time. You get one, you know, chance. So
but you can always go back and add schools, right? So it's two different
right,
things,
that's
right?
different than right.
You want to touch on that just a little bit, the difference between or mechanics of adding a school versus making a change?
So when you go, you know, when you log onto your account after you've submitted it, there are a few sections that'll come up, and one of the one is to make a change or a correction, and one is to add schools, right? They're two different sections. So if you mistyped a number or something like that, then you're going to select the one that allows you to correct something on the form. And all you really do is you type in what you want to change. You don't actually go to that field and change it. And then I guess you have to hope that you typed it in with enough clarity so that the people reviewing it know to fix that number for you.
Good stuff. You want to take the next one or you want me to?
Oh, okay, so I think the next one is regarding real estate values. Can we use the IRS quick sale rule for all of them? I have been using all of them, and I believe that you can use all of them. Because the same kind of concept applies, that if you have to sell it quick, if you need money for college, you know, it's the same no matter whether you live in the house or you're renting it out. Matter of fact, it might even be more difficult if you're renting it out. So
yeah, And I second that. I think the answer I gave just a minute ago wasn't as clear. I probably fumbled my way through it, but Rynda, I agree with Rynda. What's the difference between the two SAI types? So I'll go back. I assume you saw it at the top of my screen. Can you guys see my screen? So
Yep.
there's a federal SAI that is for the FAFSA that uses a different set of questions. It's not available yet, but we're making that estimate. And then the institutional SAI comes from the answers to your CSS profile, including how schools treat home equity and stuff like that. So, excuse me, there's two versions. Federal is going to mostly apply to, big state institutions, University of Nebraska, University of Kansas, UT, whatever. Institutional will apply to the privates, and you can check on that at any given school by clicking on the name, Northwestern. You can go to admissions, and where is it?
Under financial, you've got admissions opened up.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right. Financial. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Sorry about that. SAI basis institutional. So you can see here for Northwestern, it's institutional. It'll use that one. And then if we go to University of Mississippi, financial aid, SAI basis federal. So that's essentially the difference.
And there are, when it says institutional, there are a handful of schools that's referring to like a proprietary form that only that school has, that's different from the CSS profile. So that's one of the reasons we recommend you read your admissions websites carefully, because that's where you would find out that kind of information in terms of if there's a whole separate financial aid form outside of the FAFSA and the CSS profile.
Yeah, and it is kind of weird because like Arizona State's a public school, right? But they require the CSS profile, so there's weird exceptions. You just, as a parent or as a student, you got to stay on top of the requirements and the deadlines.
Yep. Okay, so for the question where they ask how much you plan to contribute to paying for college, I learned that your answer does not help you but can hurt you. Should we divide the $529 amount by 4 years for our only child? That's one strategy. Another one I've heard that we use actually a lot at CAP too is to take 10% of your income for the year. Do you have any other strategies for that, Chuck?
Yeah, so I know there's been a little bit of conflicting information on this, right? So we've heard in terms of 529 accounts that one of the updates said if you have individual updates individual 529s for multiple students, you only identify the assets for each student at that time, where previously it required all 529 plans, regardless of which student it was earmarked to. And we've seen multiple updates, and there may be some backtracking. So for this one, I think to some extent you need to stay tuned, and when everything is finalized, we'll share what the final instructions are. And then that is also a question that is not required, right? So I would leave that blank. I'm pretty confident that one's not required.
I'll double check it. So I'm pretty sure, I think this one is, but
You
well,
can put 0 in it. You can type 0 if it's
put 0. And if that's how much you have to contribute, then that's the amount you should put. So the biggest takeaway is don't put more than you can actually pay, because and don't put more than your student aid index for that school either, right? So, because once the reviewer sees that you are willing to pay a certain amount, they're not gonna, it's gonna be hard for them to offer to give you need-based aid that would be below that amount, how much you paid. So, okay. Do colleges ask for a bank statement for savings and checking account balance? No. I have never seen that come up as something that was asked for the CSS profile. Taking a screenshot, that's a great idea, but just it's like a lot of things when you file your taxes, you don't necessarily have to provide supporting documentation to the IRS, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't keep that documentation on file at your home. So I think that's a great idea. The process you're thinking about is after you submit your CSS profile, a lot of schools use what's called IDOC, which is also through College Board, where you'll get an email inviting you to come set up your IDOC account. And once you get in there, it's going to tell you what documentation you need to upload. And it's typically your tax returns and W-2s. I've never seen it, ask for account statements for what it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, tax returns, schedules, W-2s, but yeah. All right. Do NC Promise schools offer much in the way of merit or need-based aid? I'm not familiar. I assume that's North Carolina Promise schools. I am not super familiar with
I would go
that.
to MyCap and but hopefully you have a premium account and you can pull up those schools. I'm not sure which schools those are either, but sorry, I just jumped right in on you, Chuck.
No, you're good. That's the best way to do it.
But yeah, that would be the best way to find out what kind of aid those schools might offer.
Yeah, any aid questions can be solved by MyCap. If you have a good, complete, accurate profile, you can have a lot of confidence in these numbers. I mean, I've been doing this for a while now, and every year it seems like 60% come back, almost right on the dot, and 20% come in slightly under, 20% come in slightly over, and usually there's an explanation. So you should have a lot of confidence if you put in good information that you're going to get good information out. All right. Expect change field, yes or no, is required, and so is special circumstances checkbox. Do the answers to these create other potential questions? I've been advised not to go into special circumstances explanations in the CSS and wait for post-acceptance direct appeals to the school. How much of special circumstances changes and explanations should be included up front? Rynda touched on this earlier, and I agree. Save all those for the appeal process after you get your award, right? If you've told them about a special situation, at that point, they can say they consider that in the original award and you're kind of out of options. If you save that for after your award, they at least have to consider it. So her answer was golden.
Okay. What are your thoughts about FastWeb? I don't do you know what that is, Chuck?
Sure, it's a scholarship site.
Okay.
So what I would say is FastWeb versus any other scholarship site, I don't have a strong opinion on one way or the other. What I do have an opinion on is about 85% of all the scholarship discounts, discounts, dollars that go to reducing the cost of college come from the universities themselves. I would encourage you to take advantage of MyCap, find out which schools are going to be the most generous, and that's going to be the bigger part of your savings. After that, you can go through FastWeb, you can go through any of the other sites. I actually have, here, I'll show you just a second. A little flyer I use that has, scholarships 360, College Board, niche, Raise Me, Going Merry, FastWeb, all of those. But what you need to know about those is it's going to take 10 to 20 hours on average to get like a $2,000 scholarship. So it's not easy. It's a lot of work. You need to be exploiting the colleges themselves for the awards first and work on that second. And then since we're talking about CSS profile, there's some questions about, did you receive any other scholarships or expect to? And ultimately, if you do disclose that, some schools may in fact reduce the amount of aid they give you by the dollar amount of your external scholarship. So I certainly wouldn't discourage you. Spend as much time, every dollar counts, but just be aware of the impact. Rynda, anything else to add on that?
Nope. And as far as the next question, I'm looking up the questions on that. Do you have a quick answer? Because I was going to look up the questions on my actual CSS dummy account on, it's about life insurance.
Yeah, so generally, I think life insurance is not counted as an asset, whole life, term life, stuff like that. I know there's a lot of people, financial advisors, insurance salesmen, who do go out and tout this as a way to, reduce your SAI to some extent. You can borrow against life insurance, and I think the plan or strategy is to take all your assets, put it into whole life, and then borrow against it as a way to pay for college and keep your assets low. I just encourage anybody who's considering that to be extra cautious. Do a lot of research and review before you pursue that route, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, wow.
And we have 4 minutes to go.
Oh, we got one more question here. Once merit awards are entered into MyCap, if the program says that the award is in line with expectations, should we not appeal? Well, so keep in mind, MyCap only knows the data or the information that you've put in your profile. So there could be other things about your situation that it doesn't know. And there could be other reasons that you might want to appeal. So if you want like a fuller answer to that question, I think you would want to sign up for an hour and talk to one of the pros at College Aid Pro about that.
Yeah, and the one thing I always add on that is 100% of the time you will not get what you don't ask for. So on the CSS profile and parent income section, are they seeking just reportable income? There's a lot of questions, and they want to know as much about your financial picture as possible. I would tell you, if it's not a required field, don't complete it. And it's your CSS profile. You have to be comfortable with what you put in there. Don't lie, don't be fraudulent, but if it's not required, don't add it. And they're trying to get the biggest holistic picture of your financial picture as they can.
We did it.
That's outstanding. Well, guys, we hope this was.
All right. How about this? We do have 2 minutes. I'll try to do it in 2 minutes. How about that, Chuck?
Awesome.
If a school wants 4 years of math, are they looking for 4 years, or are they looking for completion to a certain level? That's an admissions question, and I don't know that I would be able to answer that.
I wouldn't even take a swing. I don't know. No. Sorry, Melissa. Look, we hope this has been valuable. Come back in 2 weeks and join us. I think it might be myself and Dan next week, or in 2 weeks. Yep. So I like to call us the killer bees. He's way better at this than I am, but we love doing it. If you have any other questions, go to the website. There's a ton of free resources. Make sure you're using the MyCap software to the maximum, and have a great night and good luck with your college journey. We appreciate your time. Rynda?
Yep. Good night, everybody.